The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
Hello, and welcome everyone to Always Another Way podcast. My name is Marina Sprocki-Spriggs, and I have a master's in professional counseling. I am the IPPY Award-winning author of Stop Looking for a Husband, Find the Love of Your Life, and Nasty Divorce, A Kid's Eye View. I write positive divorce advice for the HuffPost, and I'm trained in clinical hypnosis. And this podcast speaks to outside-of-the-box thinkers, and it's for those who hear the call of hope and always another way. And if you're very rigid and set in your beliefs, this probably isn't your cup of tea. However, you should note, taste can, and do change. And I am very, very excited about today's show. We are going to be talking about Myco meditations with Eric Osborne. And I'm sure you're like, what is Myco meditations? Well, I just got back from the Los Angeles Psychedelic Science Symposium. It was the first ever of its kind at UCLA, which brought together a whole bunch of research, people together, live panels, speakers, and exhibits to talk about psychedelics and plant medicine. And the keynote speaker was Dr. Gabor Mate, who is very, very well known, talking about trauma and addiction. He opened it up, and I just met a ton of people. One of them is my guest, Eric. But just so you know, so it doesn't seem like we're just on here talking about drugs. We're going to refer to him as plant medicine, because that's what it is. And that's what lots of medicines are, derived from plants. But also to kind of break through that stigma of what these things are. And maybe you don't know, but there have been studies going on at Johns Hopkins universities about psilocybin. Yale studied psilocybin for cluster headaches. There are numerous ongoing studies right now across the U.S. for MDMA. But then there's also the mystical experience question. And is it okay? Well, I think it's okay. But can we make it okay and normal for people to want to seek mystical experiences? And even beyond that, I mean, I think a lot of people really are seeking for that purpose and meaning. But there's a lot of ways that you can find healing. So anyways, this conference was about healing. So they had a really nice veterans panel. And you can go to the LAPS Facebook page, and they have all the speakers are live streamed. But talking with 4 veterans who had used ayahuasca and then I think one MDMA for healing from PTSD. And just to hear these, actually there were 5 people, talk about their experiences with what they've gone through. And then from going on, like one guy was on, I think, 20 different pharmaceutical medications and now takes none. Just that alone of one person and somebody who was suicidal who is not anymore is enough to take this stuff seriously. So I want to bring on my guest, Eric Osborne. Eric was raised in the countryside of rural Kentucky. Eric has remained anything but traditional, hence why he's on Always Another Way. He's a smarty at the party, too. He graduated with a master's in education from the University of Louisville, but soon became an educator, not of English, as he was trained, but of mycology, which he learned through immersion. He's the founder of Magnificent Mushrooms. It's a gourmet mushroom farm and consulting. He's Indiana's first state-recognized wild mushroom expert and a conscientious psychonaut. Eric began working in underground psilocybin therapy for 5 years before being arrested. Informed of his activities, police raided his farm and home, charged him with 3 Class B felonies, and turned his life upside down. However, unwilling to be thwarted, after his release from incarceration, Eric founded the 5013C organization, Pledge Inc. It's the Psychedelic Liberation Education, Discipline, and Guidance, the for-profit venture Myco Meditations, a legal psilocybin retreat program in rural Jamaica, and the Myco Meditations podcast. He's a husband, father of 3, and passionate about psychedelic healing. And Eric has used hurdles as inspiration to bring forward the medicine of mushrooms. So, welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and it was so cool that I just got to meet you too, because I'd actually reached out to Eric prior to this on Twitter, and then just so happened saw Myco Meditations as one of the sponsors, and it worked out like that.
Yeah, Marina, that was a great surprise, and there were a lot of great individuals, as you mentioned earlier, at the conference. So, really happy to have made your acquaintance prior to this, and all the great folks there.
Yeah. So let's talk about, first let's talk about mushrooms in general. So you are an expert in mushrooms and a forager. Let's tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I'm really happy that your focus is the plants, because that's what it is for me. That's where it began for me, ultimately. I fell in love with mushrooms when I got into wild foods. And mycology is such a vast world that I quickly realized I had to let go of a lot more traditional plants if I was going to have room for the mushroom knowledge. So that just basically developed into it's an ongoing relationship. My 2 sons and I just went and picked chanterelles
nice.
in a storm 2 days ago. So the love of fungi as an ecological and a gastronomical interface it just continues over the last 25 years now. Psilocybin became a part of that actually considerably after I became engaged in cultivation of gourmet mushrooms. I had some psilocybin experiences prior to that, but I didn't view them as mushrooms. I viewed them as drugs. Mm-hmm. And so it took my engagement with the natural world and mushrooms as a placeholder in our ecology for me to understand really the vastness and the potential for psilocybin within our psychology. It's just been a really interesting relationship that I've had and continue to really highly value and really love to share with others.
Cool. Well, let's talk about that and the from that discovering the psilocybin and then that change in you from okay, it's a drug to it is a medicine. When did you first kind of realize that, and then maybe explain how that enveloped, and then from there we'll go. Did you hear me?
In and out.
Okay, in and out. Oh, sorry. So
okay.
The last thing I said is, did you? So can we talk about the psilocybin experience from when you first found them as drugs to your realization that they're more than that, they're medicine, and then from there, the capabilities of this medicine for widespread, therapeutical use?
Yeah, there really wasn't, I would say, a hard line where that definition became clear. Once I moved out to Indiana and started the farm, the actual gourmet farm, then I had the opportunity to work with psilocybin more directly, let's say, and that soon led me to understand that there was far more potential in this plant medicine than I had ever thought. So that just became a dedicated relationship. It's kind of common among people who grow their own mushrooms that find that while mushrooms aren't addictive, there is an addictive quality to growing mushrooms because they're so easy. It's so easy once you learn how to grow a handful of mushrooms, then you can grow just as many as you want ultimately. So the relationship really, there was a large part of it was entwined with cultivation and consumption.
Cool. And just watching how they grow.
Yeah, I mean, it's further than that. If we're going to talk about it as far as plant intelligences or, the plants themselves, fungi, we in cultivation, we clone mushrooms more than grow from seed. So in typical agriculture, you're growing from seed. Whereas with fungi, you grow from clones. So you maintain the same genetic line, the same, not even species, you maintain the exact same organism over the course of, I don't know, a decade or more, however long you can keep it going. I had some that were 5 or 7 years old. And you actually do develop a relationship, because mushrooms are more closely related to animals than they are to plants, right? A lot of the same characteristics. And so that relationship can get really interesting over a long period of time. Even the oyster mushrooms that I grew, or the shiitake, I had such a deep relationship with these various strains and knew their parameters so well and what they liked. And we ate so much of them that, you start to realize that you are what you eat. And that is, that's real. That's not just a theory.
Oh, that's for sure true, as we see of the toxic nature of a lot of the food now. Yeah, with all that stuff on it. And so within that, let's talk a little bit about the energy of the plants and what they can bring. And from that, let's talk about what you do with the Myco meditation retreats. So we'll talk about plant energy, and then let's go into, if somebody wants to go, explore this further, how they do that.
Well, I don't know. In terms of the energy of the plants, I don't really have sufficient vocabulary, I feel like, for that. I definitely have a relationship with various plants and species of fungi. I think that they all seem to have their own attributes, qualities more so. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's just that each is useful in a different way. Psilocybin, as the research is showing, but really as history has shown, psilocybin is extremely effective at, I'm sorry, I'm getting some real background echoing here.
Sorry.
On the surface level, as healing or beneficial for depression or anxiety or post-traumatic stress disorder. But if we look at it at a deeper level, what we really are seeing it do is bond people to the larger community, to the earth as a whole, nature, to their own history, their ancestry, even the future. And it's more difficult to directly pinpoint or quantify, but research is showing, and there's some research that's coming out in the next in the near future, I think, it's going to really illustrate the same thing, that the communal aspect of psychedelics is one of the most valuable healing elements of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about, so in bringing those healing aspects together. So let's talk about your retreats, how they work, and how you bring all of this together. And I had actually met, while we were at the conference, there was a woman who had come up who had been to one of his retreats, and like the glow and smile on her face, the energy that she had, and I was just happened to be talking to him, and she had walked up. She was just so gracious and so thankful, and just like, oh my gosh, like it was life-changing for her. And just, you could just tell so much that, and I don't know the backstory, but came out to this conference. Really cool.
Yeah, we definitely see some massive changes occur in people over the course of a week. It's phenomenal, really. A basic week with us looks like a lot of preparation and integration with some kind of general sightseeing thrown in there as well. The area that we go to is a very quiet rural side of Jamaica on the south coast, and we work on property that is just very community centered. Some of there are levels of accommodations from just basic B&B style to really nice hotels or guest houses. But yeah, it's just really a lot of preparation and integration that involves the entirety of the group. We do have options for private or smaller retreats if people like. And while I was initially more in favor of the smaller groups, I've really found that groups of 15, 17 work out really well in helping individuals kind of mirror each other through the week and find little niches where they fit in. Because like I was saying, so many people are experiencing these conditions because of a lack of connection. And we don't realize that. We don't realize that's what's going on, but it really is what's underlying so many of our ailments.
Yes, and you and just to interject real quick, you hit the nail on that. There, I had on Johan Hari, who wrote a book called Lost Connections and did like extensive research, and that is exactly it. Yes. Okay, so keep going. So you've got people there. We're going along. We're developing these connections. And when does the psilocybin experience come into play on this retreat? So they're a week long. How
Yeah, we do 7 and 10 day retreats. And are you all getting this feedback behind you? Are you hearing this?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not hearing any feedback, but I know what that's like
as long
for
as
distraction. No, I'm not hearing it, but I know the distraction when
fine.
there's like a noise.
No problem. So we do 7 and 10 day retreats. The first dosing starts on the first full day. So everybody gets in, kind of gets a rest, gets to know each other a little bit, gets acquainted in their rooms, etc. Then the next day we do full on icebreakers and everybody really formal introductions to the team and kind of the process. And I do some presentations of the history of psilocybin from Paleolithic up to now, because psilocybin mushrooms are depicted in our oldest known cave paintings. There's a fascinating history that runs through our fascinating story that runs through human history of mushrooms as such a highly valuable and an intimate part of forming culture, which is what we're seeing and what we're talking about here. And then the first dose generally starts at 1 to 3 grams. We kind of keep it light and mellow, get everybody's feet wet, see what the general responses are. And then through the week, we will gauge kind of on an individual basis where everybody wants to go. Some people really want to push the throttle, like the individual you mentioned meeting at the Labs conference. She was just, oh man, what an explorer she was. And she ended up doing 10 grams on her last dosing, which is a really, really a high dose, especially for someone who had, prior to Myco meditations, never had experience with psilocybin. And as you saw, it was incredibly beneficial for her. And now, one of the things that's being talked about in this, and we need people to understand, is that psychedelics through history, these plants have been used moreover as a maintenance, right? This is not some one-off experience that people have gone to have massive healing. It does have that effect, and that's one of the most beautiful things about it, about these plants, but it doesn't last forever. It's not a cure-all. It's not going to fix all of your life's problems. It's going to give you a significant window into ways that you can improve the quality of your life, but it's going to be up to you to do the things that improve the quality of your life.
Right. And that was the key of all that conference too, about using entheogens and plant medicines, is it works to just open up the door, but you've got to walk through it and do the work. Can get you there faster to open the door to new ideas, but then you've just got to go and get on it.
Absolutely.
Cool. So you do that, see how people go, and then, I saw the end result of somebody at your retreat.
Well, that's one person. Yeah, there were actually a couple people there at the conference who had been through our program, and both of them were doing really well. But that's not to say people don't struggle afterwards. I spoke with someone yesterday who had been on our most recent retreat, and she came back to, a life that was as it was when she left it. And when you have a massive change and you come home and everything and everyone around you hasn't had that massive change, that can be difficult. So we always offer integration after the retreat. We have at least one 1-hour session with clients after the retreat to just check in and help provide them with resources if they are struggling. Maybe they've had some major revelation and now they have to figure out what to do with it, or they've uncovered some trauma that needs further exploration. Then we have a network of counselors, therapists, and coaches that can help with that if it's not a member of our team as well.
Awesome. I mean, and that really is a big thing too, is that it's not magic. I mean, nothing is a magic cure-all for everything, but a good door opener too. And what type of people do you think should come to your retreats? What type of people are
I think
gathered to this?
It's easier to define the ones that should not engage with psilocybin, honestly.
Okay.
People who are bipolar, have been diagnosed bipolar, or schizophrenic absolutely should not consume psilocybin or any psychedelic until we have a better understanding what that means. Unfortunately, that means that we're going to have people experimenting and finding out in less than formal ways. So I'm not sure this is really the best approach right now, but for safety, liability, and personal safety, bipolar, schizophrenic, should stay out. If you have struggled with addiction with some very difficult substance such as heroin, opiates, or methamphetamines, then maybe a different retreat is right. Iboga or ibogaine clinics are showing a lot of promise there. That's a route from Africa. But psilocybin is extremely helpful to people who are suffering from various levels of depression, from mild to untreatable, people who are highly anxious, be it from PTSD or kind of decision making, just any anxiety, social anxiety. I've seen it really help a lot of people there. If you're wanting a creative boost, we've had scientists come down, biologists who have themselves found the experience lead them to new areas of interest. And some of them even questioned why these were not part of the graduate tools when they were working towards their degree. We've had members of the clergy down and people who are interested in spiritual exploration. Your question about the mystical experience, I think, is extremely valid across the spectrum, because even the research shows that the relief from depression, anxiety, OCD, et cetera, is closely tied to the mystical encounter, experiencing something that is larger than yourself or undefinable. And that the whole conversation about whether or not plants are a shortcut or a lazy way out is just kind of moot on my ears. I just of course, plants are a viable way to access knowledge, to transcend this body, and anything that helps us along that way is going to be beneficial, as long as we have a daily practice to support that.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. I'd like to talk more about that. Just interesting of mystical and interesting and creative experiences, that these things that just grow without any help from anybody, too. Not that you can't do them, but do grow. And I believe anything that is here for a reason. And then putting that, we're going to talk about, when we talk about mystical experiences, that the conscientiousness to using these things is already there. It's not on a whim and it's not a party thing, but to truly to talk about, and I've used different things that have gotten really good creative ideas and other things from too. And, why not? It's coming from my brain, but just, you can watch a sunset and see something too.
It's been clearly shown that DMT, dimethyltryptamine, the most powerful hallucinogen, is endogenous to the human body. So our mystical experiences, our quote mystical experiences, are really they're really drug induced anyway. They're just drugs that our body produces, right? So if a plant produces a drug, which it does, and it could be caffeine, it could be sugar, it could be any number of things. If a plant produces this and I consume it, where's the ethical problem there? This is a gift from the earth to me, as far as I can tell.
There you go. Okay, so what else do you want our listeners to know just about psilocybins, about plant medicine, and even just about, mushrooms in general, because there are just of other mushrooms aside from psilocybin. I mean, there's numerous health benefits. I don't even know all the species of mushrooms. Isn't that true too?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. There are so many mushrooms that are so good for us. The one I think you're referring to is lion's mane, Hericium erinaceus, and that genus. They are a tooth fungus that grows on dead and dying hardwoods. They are the only plant, only life form that we know of that produces human nerve growth factor, which actually does repair the tips of the dendrites. So it improves neural connectivity. There's some evidence that it is effective against Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's also a gastrointestinal. Traditionally, it's been used for ulcers and stomach cancers. Powerful mushroom. Maitake, shiitake.
I love maitake mushrooms. Oh my gosh.
There's so many. And some of the most obscure woody conch mushrooms that you would never think of eating are a most powerful immune boosting tea. Antibiotics. It's just really fascinating. It's a world that we know so little about and has so much to offer us. Yeah.
Okay. Anything?
It's endless study. That's what I can say.
Endless studies. So for everybody, listening here, where can let's talk about where they can find you for all the things, for just like some good, for mushrooms all along the spectrum. And I'm a maitake fan. Oh my gosh.
Well,
could eat those on the daily.
Fortunately, or unfortunately, I don't know, it is what it is right now. The bulk or the entirety of my mycology focus on psilocybin. Because I have this opportunity to make to cultivate legally, and basically give it to people, administer it legally. That response there has been overwhelming. So I've just got to dump all my efforts into that right now, which is fine because it is a food and it is a medicine.
Okay, hold on a second. I can't hear you so super well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but if you are looking for just general mushroom information, I would initially point you to Fungi Perfecti. They are the big company out west. Paul Stamets, he's been my mentor from afar for the last 20 years, and he'd be the #1 person. Then there's Trad Cotter of Mushroom Mountain on the East Coast down in South Carolina. If it's for psilocybin you want to discuss, and one thing I do want to say about all mushrooms in general, but psilocybin really clearly is that because they are safe doesn't mean that they're without risk. So there are more mushrooms that can save your life, and there are mushrooms that can kill you painful, long painful death. Psilocybin can be an extremely powerful and healing experience, but it can also be a terrifying experience that you need assistance and guidance through and with.
Absolutely.
I have seen some real rough times with psilocybin. On the other side of that, there's a lot of healing. But if there wasn't somebody there who really understood the landscape very well, they could have come out completely differently.
Yes, and the Zendo Project does a lot of that psychedelic harm reduction because because they are very powerful plant medicine, and it's not just like, it's not a candy bar, you need a lot of guidance, and then, just like anything else, there's instructions, there's also good mental states, there's a bunch of things required, so we're not talking about any of this flippantly at all. Right,
absolutely.
And then in Myco Meditations, they can check out all the information if they want to go on a retreat. And when's your next one coming up?
We do retreats monthly, probably for 2019, which we're working on that calendar. We're going to have them twice a month, I have a feeling. But yeah, Myco, as in mycology, MYCO, meditations.com.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Eric. You are just a wealth of knowledge on
Thank you, Marina.
just all things mushroom and, I mean, healing benefits all around the board. And I hope that everybody just, takes away from this that there's just always another way to do things because, there's always another way.